In order, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
United States, America, and to the republic which is
under God,
nation.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment, we did not have anyone sign up. Is there anybody that would like to make public comment? All right. Move on to 4, approval of the August 9th, 2022 Public Safety Committee meeting. Motion by Supervisor Mask. Go ahead.
So this is just a general question about the minutes. I've noticed in this committee, as well as others, when the minutes are written, there's a lot of sections where it says discussion was had, questions were asked and answered. With other minutes from different counties, such as Oneida and Vilas, when we read the minutes, we get more details about what discussion was had, what questions were asked, and what answers were given, which is very helpful when reading minutes for not only committee members, such as myself. I did watch, of course, the meeting from last month, but we can't expect all the other supervisors who aren't on this committee to have to watch every committee to know what's going on, as well as the general public that would want to know what happened in the meeting to kind of keep up on it, to watch every meeting on YouTube. So just my question is, maybe there was discussion had and questions asked and answered previously that made a decision as to why they're written this way, but I just feel it would be better to have more details.
So to that, I guess I will say that when we were at when I was at the town of Texas, obviously depending on the length of meetings, they can get kind of over the top. So I guess what I would do is I would have to ask, like, whoever's taking the notes how we decided to do that. I've never been asked that before, I'll be honest with you, but I can turn it over to Administrator Leonard on what he thinks, because this got taken over now by the clerk's office, where in the past I know it was actually done through your office for a while.
Correct, and I'm sure at some point the Corp Counsel is going to cut me off for not being on the agenda, but I can provide a little bit of history. He's nodding his head. A little bit of history, the idea of how in-depth minutes should be and how they should be taken has been an item of discussion at the county board from my first days in county administration over 6 years ago. And what is required by Robert's rules, as Corp Counsel can elaborate on, is really simply that your minutes capture who makes a motion, who makes the second, and whether or not the motion is successful. And in fact, the Counties Association general guidance is that should be the approach for minutes. Certainly, that has ebbed and flowed over time, and some committees take minutes of, I would say, a different character, and that was certainly the case when we had multiple individuals responsible for taking minutes. Part of the idea of consolidating all the minutes within Kim's office, first and foremost, Wisconsin statute requires that the county clerk is the individual responsible for agendas and minutes relative to committees of the county board, standing committees and the board itself. So that has been kind of the evolution and discussion relative to minutes as I would characterize it. I don't know if, Kim, if you have anything else you want to say, or if Corp Counsel is going to tell us we need to stop talking.
Corp Counsel is going to suggest that we're going a little astray from the agenda.
So what I will say to that is, I think the proper way to vet this would be send it to the executive committee for possible discussion agendized about how we our current policy, and how we could look at there's really not a current policy except state statute on how we take minutes. So it would be something that we would talk about if we would like to make a policy moving forward, if that's what I guess I would say we would do. So I would do that. I will talk to, it'd be Supervisor or Chairman Gibbs about possibly putting it on as a discussion point. Yep. All right, so we have a motion by Supervisor Mask, and I do not have a second yet. Second by Supervisor Marash. All in favor? All right. Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 5, policy issues, discussion, and potential committee determination. Recommendation to executive committee for the update to the strategies, objectives, and expected outcomes found in the 2018-2022 strategic plan. 1, what are the new strategies needed to be added to the existing objectives and plan? I'm just read through them, then we'll come back up. 2, strategies to be prioritized within existing objectives. 3, strategies or objectives from the 2016 comprehensive plan to add to the strategic plan. So I think everyone should have what's up on the board, which I said I was going to do it, and then Administrator Leonard said he'd be happy to put one together, what he had heard through us having the discussion. I think that was, Matt, I can do this way better than you, just saying. So this is our working document, I feel, at this point. And at this point, I'd like to bring up, because Supervisor Marash brought a lot of good points forward. At the last meeting, we brought some other things forward. I'm actually going to have something maybe to add after I listen to the rest of the committee, but I would like the discussion on this document and what they'd like to see added, removed. Is it good? And I can start out with committee's thoughts on this.
I thought it was good.
Okay.
I agree.
The one thing I did, just so everyone is aware, my Administrator Leonard, the DA, and myself did meet with the Public Defender's Office from Madison, and they are having some of the same struggles we are having, maybe even, well, they're having struggles, and the struggle is finding public defenders and then finding private bar attorneys to take cases. I'll turn it over to Lance in a little bit here because he knows more about, or Teresa would be good as far as what's going on currently with the state, because there was something that was said the other day about apparently there's some sort of lawsuit happening against the DA, the Public Defender's Office. But that being said, they're struggling to find attorneys and get, the workload is overwhelming at this point, just like the DA. So with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa. She'll have some comments.
There is a lawsuit right now for failure to get public defender representation for individuals who qualify and requested it. It's an interesting lawsuit because it's looking at dismissal as the remedy, which I don't know how successful that will be. So it's not really a problem-solving type of lawsuit. It's more of a drawing public attention to the need, but the way that it's put forth, I don't know how effective that will be, but it certainly was only a matter of time before those types of lawsuits. That might be the first of many to come forth. I don't know, but I'm surprised that it's taken this long for one of those to come forth. So I don't know what the end result of that is going to be as far as affecting change for. One of the things I guess that I'll say is that the Public Defender's Office at the state level expressed the fact that there just aren't enough bodies anywhere in the state. So there aren't enough attorneys. And can you believe I'm saying that? I mean, when I was growing up, all we heard about, all there is attorneys everywhere, and now it's like we really don't have enough attorneys. So for the first time in Marquette University's history, because there's only 2 law schools, right? University of Wisconsin-Madison and Marquette. They have programs for prosecutors, people interested in becoming prosecutors or public defenders. For the first time in their school's history, their law school's history, they have no one enrolled in their public defender clinic. I have heard that there isn't a real push coming from the law schools to have people take up this type of work, prosecution or public defender work. It's not being exactly glorified to students. So there's like a combination of factors, but the end result is people are not attracted to the profession because of the overwhelming nature of the work, the volume of the work, the mental stress of the work, the pay, and there aren't enough people to go around. So, I mean, you'll hear my presentation a little bit, but it's certainly hitting the public defender's office pretty hard.
And if I can add one thing, Teresa alluded to this, as did Chair Boots. So you have the shortage of, as Teresa said, shortage of bodies, the people that are actually going to go work for the public defender's office. But then you also have just the general shortage of lawyers. And the way that the state is set up in terms of, if you're a private lawyer, that is, I'm not employed by the state public defender, I can nevertheless agree to take cases from the public defender, but I get paid at a rate of $70 an hour in the state of Wisconsin, right? I think that's still right.
No, I thought it was less, wasn't it? Wasn't it?
It used to be less, but it went up to $70. The reality of the current environment with respect to the practice of law, $70 doesn't keep the lights on, really, if you're operating a law firm. And there's a lot of other work that lawyers can do that makes the need to take those essentially non-existent. There's enough other work to go around, so why would you take $70 an hour an appointment? Particularly when there's a county appointment process where the rate is $100 an hour, and the cases are very, very similar, and sometimes, in fact, they're the same. So you have some environments in the state of Wisconsin, some counties, where because of the shortage of lawyers taking public defender cases, judges are put in an unenviable situation of having to determine whether or not to appoint at a county appointment rate, that $100 rate, as opposed to the $70 rate, despite the fact that the person, the individual that's charged with the crime qualifies for public defender representation, but the judges feel the need to do that to at least get someone to take the case. And someone might take it at the $100 rate as opposed to the $70 rate, which has started to happen here. The negative aspect of that, apart from just the general strain it puts on the justice system, it delays cases, but the other part that I am particularly interested in is the impact on county budgets. We don't budget enough funds to appoint at the county rate for all of the cases that would otherwise be appointed at the public defender rate. So as Teresa said, that's kind of the environment that led to this lawsuit that has happened, essentially challenging the state public defender's office to get these appointments made. So as Chair Boots referenced, the chair, myself, Teresa, Lori Yari from my office, and other representatives from the court system participated in a meeting with the state public defender, Attorney Thompson, and Attorney Kelly Thompson, and we kind of heard that explanation of the system. So as I understand it, Chair Boots, your thought process is to develop perhaps a strategy that calls upon this committee or other or staff to identify potential avenues to address the shortage of public defenders.
Yeah, and I wanted to put that out to this committee and just see what their thought process on that was, because it is something that is bottlenecking things down. I mean, it really is, and I guess I didn't realize how bad it was getting, and it was an eye-opener. I mean, we kind of knew it through the DA's office, through what Teresa's been saying through the last couple of years, but when we talked to the public defender's office, so it's a two-part, and so it's really something I think we need to look at, because I don't think it's gonna get better in the near future, just by what I'm hearing.
And maybe Teresa can expound upon this. Certainly, I don't have the firsthand knowledge, but my sense from that meeting was that the problem is more, it exists across the state, but it's more acute in kind of northern Wisconsin. I don't know, Teresa, if that makes sense.
What I would say is that we've heard this before, right? Marathon County is a unique place, a wonderful place to work, live, and yes. But it's a unique place in that we are like the last stop before the Northwoods, really. We have a high crime, well, I don't want to say a high crime rate, but we have a lot of crime and a lot of serious crime, and it's hard to get the volume of attorneys that we need up here in Marathon County to handle the caseload that we have for public defenders, because they're all concentrated in the Milwaukee, Madison, Fox Valley area. But given the volume of work we have here, we have the highest need. So I think we're feeling it more here because of that than maybe some of the more northern counties. Although if they have a couple of large cases, it's going to take a really long time for them to get somebody on those, even if there's a couple of them. Is that answering your question, or?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you bring up a good point. Perhaps we're feeling it more than the northern counties. I think there are, the positive that came out of the meeting was I think there are a couple of things that are low-hanging fruit that we're already talking about at the justice system level to make it more attractive to take cases in Marathon County. One of them is enhancing our ability to do video appearances for lawyers. The idea that if I am a lawyer in, to Teresa's point, in Milwaukee or Madison, that I can take a case in Marathon County and not have to drive 2 hours, 2+ hours to make an appearance that would be 15 or 20 minutes, because the interesting thing is you're not able to bill at the same level that you would otherwise bill for those cases as well. So that's one of the things we can do, but if there is a desire on the part of the committee to add something to the strategic plan that calls for us to keep kind of examining what are some other creative things we can do. The good news, we're starting to have those conversations already as staff. We've been having them. But it would put in your strategic plan the desire of the board for us to do so.
Gene?
How would you word that for another strategy to make it? It's a lot of information. How do you bring it down to something that makes sense? Since you brought it up,
It would be great, and I don't know if this is what you were looking for, Mr. Chair, but I think it's really powerful if the Public Safety Committee would work to evaluate potential strategies to address the shortage of attorneys, or the shortage of individuals accepting public defender cases.
I think we would maybe do something like get something to people via email just to see if I wanted to bounce it off you guys before I went any further with it, and maybe it's something we encompass, because it's not just the public defender, it's the DA's office, so it's one of those things where it's all encompassing. And I mean, there's certain things like Lance said that we talked about, like for instance, if somebody takes a case from out of town and they come here and they have 2 clients that they're going to meet with, when the one meeting's at 9 and they have to wait 2 hours for the next client, they don't have a place to go they don't have an office. We thought, well, can we give them some space that they can at least confer or do some other work, things like that. Those are the things that we're hearing. Like, we just need to hear why they're not taking the cases, besides the money factor, which everyone knows is a factor, but there's other factors of why the private bar attorneys are not taking these cases. So I don't know. I guess I'm bouncing it off the committee. Is it something we consider now? We can always add to the strategic plan. Don't get me wrong. We can leave it as is. Say we want to work on it later too, and we can add it. We can always add to it.
If I may, Mr. Chair. This is just occurring to me now, but perhaps it's actually an outcome measure would be what you're looking for. The development of a white paper, by a certain date, perhaps by the end of 2023, so by December 31st, 2023, the Public Safety Committee will issue a white paper on recommendations to address the shortage of attorneys accepting public defender appointments, or perhaps even more broadly, if you wanted to word it, that a white paper to address the lack of public defenders and public defender counsel taking public defender appointments.
I guess, is that something the committee's even interested in looking at this point?
It sounds like it's a pretty crucial thing. I think it's a good idea to put all that down on paper. I think it's easier to read it and then edit it. All the things that, especially the stuff that Lance is saying. Teresa is told us what the problem is. We knew that. Now it's gotten to be worse. I do have a question, though. If there's a public defender that would be representing someone, say they live in Madison and they're doing video, they still have to come up here eventually, right?
At some,
That's okay.
They would have to come and appear at some point in time, but a lot of the appearances they could do by Zoom. And there is something to be said for the in-person contact, for sure. But there is a travel component. They do get paid for
I want to say
travel.
it used to be only $25 an hour, I thought, and I don't know if they upped that in our conversation. My recollection was in our conversation that we all were in, that they talked about upping that travel fee, but it's still less than what someone can get just doing work in their home county.
Right, and there was a discussion of, and it's something we're working on as a system, is access in the jail. Like Chair Boots said, they travel up here, that could be a 3-hour drive, right? And then if they go into the jail and they have to wait to see their client and then wait to get let out again because we have shortage of correctional staff, and if that mindset is in that defense attorney's mind about, I can't devote a whole day just to go up and see that client in Marathon County, they're not going to want to take further cases here either. And they, unlike, the DA's office, we have to take whatever comes in, a private bar attorney can just say, I don't want to take it. They don't have to explain why. They don't have to give an excuse. They can just say, I don't want it.
Matt, I like your idea of putting it into an email for the committee to take a look at with all the stuff that's discussed here right now. When we're done with that, I have one more question about something on here.
if that is the case, putting something together, I just want to say that we have to bring something, I have to, because I've already said I would, to the executive committee in draft form saying this is what we'd like to see on the strategic plan. So if we would like to do this and add this, we would either have to have another meeting, maybe prior to or before the executive committee, because we already kind of postponed this, like some of the other committees already have their stuff forward. We said we would have ours this time. So if we want to do that, we would have to either have a quick meeting before saying, yes, this is what we agree on. So go ahead.
Well, it sounds like we have an idea of what we wanted to say, so I think we should hash out the verbiage and get it over with.
1 minute.
Okay, then what we're going to do is, Lance will hash something out real quick and throw it out there. And then in the meantime, I guess, go ahead, Gene, you can talk
I
about
do
the
have
other
a
thing.
question. Lance, I don't know if it was you that mentioned a consultant would cost a lot of money, but we have the 7A, provide cost-effective, high-quality public safety services, continue to consider potential consolidate, blah, blah, blah. Committee supports securing a consultant to conduct an evaluation. I had gotten the impression that this would cost a lot of money, and so I kind of put it out of my head, but it's still in there. I think it's important. Do we have the money to cover something like that? Is it something that we can do cost effectively and still be effective in finding the information?
So there's a series of questions in there. Do I have the money identified right now as to where that would come from? The answer is no. We are in the process of developing our 2023 budget proposal within my office and all the departments. I haven't identified funding in that document either. That said, the reason I just captured the conversation of the committee, that was my intent. Certainly, I anticipate providing within the 2023 proposed budget a significant contingency amount, a contingency fund. And certainly that is always a potential source of funding for that sort of activity. The other thing that staff can do is we can try to refine how much money we're actually talking about. It's been my experience, generally speaking, a good place to start for any study is $50,000. That, it takes, to get a consultant, it's a good thing to have $50,000 as a starting point, but I don't know that that's actually what the amount of money that we would need. So I left it there just to capture the conversation. And I did start drafting some language. You'll see at the bottom of this screen that I've highlighted. I added it as an outcome measure, but if you want it as a strategy, we can certainly change that right now.
So the one thing I would say is we're already in September. We're going to be in September fairly shortly. Here we are in September, October, November, December. Yeah, see, it was vacation.
December, I had drafted by December 31st, 2023. So you have a year. If you want
Oh, I said. Oh, okay. So it's 2020. Okay, yeah, that's fine.
to
Sorry, it was a long weekend. I apologize.
the identification of kind of what you were looking for, that you'll issue a white paper for consideration by the Marathon County Board of Supervisors that identifies strategies to address the shortage of state public defenders and attorneys accepting public defender appointments in Marathon County. Trying to get both sides of that. But if I've mischaracterized in any way, I certainly can.
Looks fine to me. Any objection to that being added?
No, we can always change it if we want to. Yeah, that's good.
All right.
The only other Scrivener change I would note is outcome measure number 1 on the document that's in the packet. It identifies, it did not change the year to December 31st, 2024. The idea again being that your plan is being extended for 2 years. I changed it on the document that's up on the screen right now to reflect 2024. If the committee is okay with that, otherwise your time period would expire.
Anything further on 5A, 1 through 3? All right.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, we would need a motion, but I just want more further discussion. I'm sorry.
Make a motion to approve our strategic plan for public safety and to move it on to the executive committee.
Correct. Do I have a second?
Second.
Lamont, second.
Supervisor Marash beat you. Supervisor Lamont, I apologize. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, thank you, everyone. 6A, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy. Consideration of updates to the Emergency Operations Plan and Chapter 6 of the Marathon County Code of Ordinance. It's in your packet. With that, I guess I can turn it over to the administrator.
I'm actually going to turn it over to Phil is here, the Emergency Management Director, as well as Mike Purner, and they can both talk you through the updates to the Emergency Management Plan, the Emergency Operations Plan, as well as the amendments to your existing Chapter 6 Code of Ordinances.
There it is.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Coming before you today with a request to adopt and provide a resolution for the Emergency Operation Plan for Marathon County for 2022, the remainder of 2022 and into 2023, and also asking for adoption of the revised Chapter 6 Emergency Management Ordinance. And the ordinance is the first part in your packet.
So I think, do we have, first of all, I assume everyone's read through them. Do you have any questions or things you see in there that you see as an issue or would like further clarification on from either of the gentlemen here?
Mr. Chair, I can certainly walk through the ordinance. Phil and I met and kind of walked through line by line. Our existing ordinance had a few things that just needed general updates and then a few things that were, I think, entirely missing that we wanted to address as long as we were taking the opportunity. You'll see generally throughout the ordinance, which is section or chapter 6 of our general code of ordinances, updating statutory citations. Every time we update an ordinance, we try to do that to make sure that we're hitting the up-to-date statutory citations and that we're not citing to something that no longer exists. So those are important ministerial updates, but they're definitely throughout this document. If you take a look at subsection 2, the definitions section, that's really moved up from a different section of this ordinance. We kept definitions mostly the same, but we did move them so that they're right at the head of the ordinance, which is consistent with other ordinances that we have. Throughout this document, we also removed things that really didn't belong in a county ordinance. One of them is the previous subsection 2, which talked about what any local unit of government can do, which is a correct restatement of state law, but it doesn't need to be in our county ordinance. Our county ordinance lays out what we can do pursuant to state law. We don't really have the power to say what towns, villages, and cities can do in the county, so we removed that. Subsection 3, in addition to cleaning up statutory citations, we did try to make the ability to declare an emergency consistent with statute 323.14.4b. So one of those things that we believed was required there was, no offense to our administrator, but removing the county administrator from the following persons may declare a state of emergency. The reason there is, if you look at the statute, it actually says that in the event that the body, the county board, cannot meet to declare an emergency, it says that the chief executive officer of a county can do that. The administrator is not the chief executive officer of a county. There is some other interpretation, and we're reaching out to Wisconsin Counties Association to see if they can give us the reasoning why they think perhaps the county administrator would fit into that statute, but just based on a plain reading, we wanted to make sure we're compliant with what state law requires. Sub 4 really just outlines what 323.11 indicates are the county board's powers in emergencies. We did remove some technical rescue definitions that we just thought were not really applicable at that spot.
Could you please comment on section 6.03, the Local Emergency Management Committee?
Absolutely.
Local Emergency Planning Committee. That is an error.
So that section 6.03 is entirely new. We've always had, or I shouldn't say always because always is a long time, but since I've been a member of the county, we've had a local emergency planning committee. It's actually required by federal law, but nowhere in our ordinance does it spell out, or did it previously spell out, that we have a local emergency planning committee, that we have membership, any of that. None of that was actually spelled out in ordinance, so this creates, basically it's in line with other ordinances that set forth membership and duties of committees. This Local Emergency Management Committee, which we call LEPC, Local Emergency Planning Committee, is formed pursuant to federal law 42 USC 11,000 and 323.60. And then it talks about how those members are appointed. Again, that's already how they're appointed, and it's consistent with state law, but we're now outlining that in ordinance so that it's clear what the appointment process is, what membership looks like, how big the committee is. Previously, it was not clear that we had county board membership on the LEPC. Now that is clear in the ordinance that at least one member shall be a member of the Marathon County Board. I don't think we've previously done that, Phil, so that's a change. And it outlines really what the terms of LEPC are, what they do, and that's all consistent with federal law. So really what we're adding here is something that the federal law requires us to do, but we're making this clear within our ordinance so that when we're looking back in 10 years and wondering who's on the LEPC, what the appointment process is, what their terms are, it's all spelled out. Moving down to 6.06, the new 6.06, we did add that the county board shall review and approve a county emergency operations plan every 5 years. We previously didn't have a time frame under which the plan is reviewed by the county board, so we wanted to make sure that that was specified. So moving forward, it was clear when that document needed to go to the board.
If I could just have us back up to section 6.05, and that is in relation to my position and how I'm hired and appointed. And we just reviewed that or revised that to reflect that I'm essentially a director. I'm hired on just like any other department head.
Yep, and that language is consistent with how other department heads are defined when they are defined within our ordinances as well. And again, there are some pieces that were removed, like way at the end, 6.12 technical rescue services. It was really just outside the scope of what this chapter was about, and didn't really need to be defined in ordinance, so that's why we elected to suggest removing it. So if anyone has any direct questions about any of the changes, certainly Phil and I would be happy to answer them as best we can.
Okay, so section 6.03, looking at the membership of the LEPC. So this has not been created yet. This is what's going to be created?
Correct. Well, there is currently an LEPC, so it is a currently comprised and sitting committee. It's already been appointed by the administrator. This would be membership moving forward from the county board's approval of these changes. Right now, the membership is consistent with what is outlined here, with the exception of there is no county board supervisor as a member. That's really the biggest difference.
And why did you choose to only have one?
If I could comment on that as well. One of the requirements, there's different groups of citizens that we have to have on this committee in accordance with the federal law. And one of the groups is elected officials. And we just chose, because we needed to have an elected official, currently right now the mayor of Wausau sits on the committee. We felt it would be beneficial to have somebody from the board sit on this committee because the Public Safety Committee is the parent organization of the LEPC. We could have more if you like, but we felt that would be, at least provide some type of awareness to the committee and support of it.
So are you saying it would be redundant to have more, so one person from the county board and then having the Public Safety Committee oversee the whole subcommittee? Is that what you're saying?
Let me see if I apologize for the confusion. The LEPC is I'm not sure how it was written up in the ordinances, but they report to the Public Safety Committee. And it would be beneficial if somebody from this committee or somebody from the county board would be part of the LEPC. Does that help? Okay.
Just to clarify, the LEPC is within your existing code of ordinances under section 2.05, as Phil referenced. So you have the kind of how you are organized as a body, right? You have a home rule. The county board has standing committees underneath it, and underneath the standing committees, you have program committees or statutory committees. The LEPC, as Phil and Mike have both referenced, is required actually by two bodies of statute. Both Wisconsin law and the United States Code requires you, each county, to have this local emergency planning committee. my interpretation of the suggestion by both Phil and Mike is to further solidify in ordinance the linkage, for lack of a better word, or the connection between this standing committee and one of its program or statutory committees underneath. I think if you do adopt that suggestion, I think it makes really good sense to also reference that in section 2.05 within the membership that's referenced in that ordinance, because right now it just indicates that the LEPC is required to have members specified within United States Code and under Wisconsin statutes, chapter 323. So we can make an internal reference there.
All right, any further questions? Go ahead.
I just have a comment. For new members in this committee, if you would have been around several years ago before Phil took over this position, I don't think that we had as comprehensive coverage of emergency management that we do now. He has streamlined things, he's made things more efficient, and this is just another example of it, working together and making it that way. But this is something that we've told you previously. When Arnie was still here a couple of years ago, we told you that, but just let you know that the improvement has been substantial. And I myself appreciate everything that you've done to make it that way, because I've seen 2 other managers before you not really do the job. So just for your information.
So with that, I think I would look for a motion to recommend this to the full county board for adoption. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Thanks a lot, guys.
Chair, would you like me to go through the emergency operations plan at all?
Yep.
Or for that one, will you be looking for a resolution?
Okay, yeah, and that's in the packet.
And I will take you through the changes. They're minimal. Essentially, this document is reviewed every year by myself and the administrator for approval. And the biggest changes that we have are in section C, and it basically goes along with the ordinance changes that we have for the line of succession. We also have added in the top hazards that we can face in the county. They're essentially the same, but that reflects the updated hazard mitigation plan that we're just completing. And that, I don't have a page number on it, it's Concept of Operations 2B. If you're curious what they are, what we have listed is the top hazard is a tornado, followed by a winter storm, followed by extreme cold. Then we have severe thunderstorms, high winds, hail, lightning, flooding, dam failures, drought, extreme heat, hazardous materials releases, and epidemic and pandemic. And those are the issues that we primarily will focus our training and exercise efforts after. Those are primarily natural hazards. We do have man-made hazards as well, but that's our primary focus for future training and exercise events. Other changes that I have in here are included, just bear with me for a moment. The mutual aid box alarm system map will be updated to reflect the inclusion of Athens and one other fire department. Distribution plan, and also the reflection on the proclamation and the declaration of an emergency or disaster. We currently had the administrator or deputy administrator had the ability to do that. We are now replacing that position with the county chair or the vice chair. And that sums up the changes.
Okay, so I would look at somebody for the resolution. A motion, second. Any discussion by the committee? Questions, concerns? All right, if not, all in favor? Aye. All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move on to 7, educational presentations and committee discussion. 7A, update from the district attorney's office on the state workload analysis and efforts to secure more state prosecutor positions. With that, go ahead, Teresa.
Thanks.
That looks like a lot of paper.
It's really not.
Oh, it's not.
It's really not. I'm always short and to the point, right? Right? No, come on. It's all valuable information. So as a group, the district attorneys across the state have put forth that pay progression and salary are the number one priorities for prosecutors. We are facing similar challenges to the public defender's office as far as getting applicants and retaining people. And last I heard, there was virtually all the DA's offices across the state submitted a request to the state to fund pay progression and look at starting salaries for district attorneys. So the starting salary is $26.70 an hour for a prosecutor. And so roughly annualized, that's $54,000 a year. There is no opportunity for overtime. If you're here 60, 70, 80 hours a week, it doesn't matter. That's what your starting salary is. There is a provision in the statutes for pay progression for prosecutors, but it's dependent on the state budget. So for example, this year, I have $1.09 to allocate for each prosecutor for a raise this year. So if I want to do a pay per performance type of raise, I would have to give somebody less than $1.09 an hour this year for a raise to give somebody more than $1.09 an hour for a raise. That's just terrible. So we, although the steps are in the statute for progression, so the top end of the pay scale after 17 years is $134,000. That's where you top out. So we have one individual in our office who is here for, just a couple of years less than me. So right around the 17-year mark, he will never make $134,000 ever, because they haven't funded the progressions in the pay scale. So if we were this is just an estimate, but similar to what the county's doing right now, if we were to get everybody who is currently a prosecutor up to where they need to be in the steps, so like if they're a 5-year employee and they're into the 17 steps where they should be at 5 years, put everybody where they belong based on their years of service, it would cost about $6.5 million across the state to do that. So one issue is the starting salary. The other is funding pay progression so that we aren't doing $1.09. The workload analysis, so that's the number one priority. I also did submit for one additional prosecutor position. I made sure I checked with the state that I wasn't undercutting our efforts to work with pay progression and starting salaries, but the recommendation for the latest workload analysis that just came out, it's actually in draft form right now, but I believe it will stay the same, is that Marathon County should have 17.35 prosecutors. We currently have 13, so we're about 4.35 short. For those who've been on this committee for a while, that's about where we've always been, about 4 prosecutors short. So we're current staffing at 74.94% of the recommended staffing that we should have. So my goal would be to, we have a deputy district attorney, so it's basically myself, the deputy district attorney as far as administrating our staff. So we have 13, it's a 13 attorney law firm, basically. And then we have all of our support staff, victim witness, and everyone. And we have an office assistant or office manager. So my deputy carries a full caseload, just like all the other prosecutors, and is expected to do the deputy work as well, which is I'll talk about our turnover. With the turnover, training new attorneys, supervising new attorneys, being that go-to person with all things administrative, so I can get out and do more things. And my hope is that we could have an additional position so she could be a true deputy. We have, in the last 10 years, we've had over 22 prosecutors leave our office. So we've turned it over almost twice. We just lost 2 prosecutors within the last 2 months. One is going to a different county where the county has agreed to fund one, just like Marathon County did for a long time, an additional prosecutor position that the state hasn't picked up. So he's going there to do the exact same job that he was doing here, except he's going to be making $97,000 a year. Because the county has decided that if they want to be competitive and they want to attract quality applicants and retain people, they're going to have to pay him. He's guaranteed a raise after 6 months and after a year. So we lost him, and then I lost another prosecutor who was actually an award-winning prosecutor to do business law because he recently was married and wants to start a family and can't afford it on the salary he's making in our office. So one thing I want to just mention, it also goes to the public defender issue, and then I'll be quiet, is that there's a perfect storm in Marathon County right now, which is the level of pending cases in our county. So it's not just the number of cases that come in every year, but the level, and I think you guys saw this in your packet, but we're clearing cases at a much, in my opinion, a much slower rate. We went from 100% to 93%, so they're stacking up. And we have increased the number of pending cases significantly since 2017. You add to that the nature of cases now with all this electronic discovery, and then the shortage of prosecutors and defense attorneys, that pending caseload number is going to go up and up and up. So it's kind of a perfect storm right now. But I have a wonderful staff, and I'm very happy with them. We do everything we can to try to keep people here and keep them happy, and I think everybody who has left has been very sad that they feel like they had to leave for their family and financial reasons. So I just got an email today from one of my counterparts in a different county in southern Wisconsin, similar size to us. They're supposed to have 10.5 prosecutors. They have 3.5 filled right now. They're down 7 prosecutors in their office. And they cannot find people who want to work there. And he actually said, if you get any applicants and you don't want them, will you please send them my way so that I can try to take them? Because he's a great district attorney, so I don't think it's him. So it really does mean that we need to be more efficient in every other way in our criminal justice system. We can't afford to have any inefficiencies. So I've been working with the case processing team to say, what are the things that are within our control that we can really kind of nip in the bud to get rid of some of this waste because we can't afford it.
The one thing, Teresa, that I forgot about when we talked with the public defenders was the same thing was brought up by the public defender's office and the state office is the body cameras. I don't think people understood how much extra time that's going to throw on everyone, and I think that's a huge issue that I guess. Yeah.
We were just talking about this in our budget meeting, and I don't know if you guys have any if this means anything to you at all. It might not. But we went up from like 6 terabytes to, was it 6 or 8 terabytes in 2020 to 40 some terabytes of data in 2021. And it's just, we're getting a surveillance video this week in for a new case. It's 85 megabytes. Did I say gigabytes? Gigabytes of, see, this means very little to me too. It's just massive. Let's just say that it's massive. So even just to get through a case and then people are going to appeal you. People are going to, if you don't do your job as a defense attorney or as a prosecutor, it's not going to stand. So almost every big case that I've ever had has gotten appealed. So you better dot your I's and cross your T's. You can't cut corners. You can't. And you're going to get an appellate attorney who's going to look it over, and somehow they find appellate attorneys, by the way. Some we never see back, but there are a lot that get appealed. So it's not like you can fake your way through as a defense attorney or a prosecutor. You really, it's scary. I know it keeps our prosecutors up at night because they're afraid they're going to miss something. They're afraid they're going to overlook something, or they're not going to know something. So,
Teresa, do you know if the Wisconsin Counties Association is anticipating sending out a resolution, like a form resolution for each county to adopt supporting the initiatives?
So I was just discussing with the other electeds this morning that individual counties are putting forth resolutions in support of pay progression and wage salary adjustment. It's a very basic resolution. It's just basically saying this has a negative impact on the criminal justice system, and we support that in order for retention and recruitment, there needs to be a competitive wage. I have an example of it. I think from our conversation this morning, I think it's going to be the goal to have the counties have similar resolutions in the content, but I don't know of anything from the Wisconsin Counties Association. And I guess for the record, I'm supportive of the public defenders initiatives as well, and I'd write a letter of support for that there's going to have to be an increase, I think, in the hourly pay for them as well. So I'm definitely see the need and support that as well. Any questions? That wasn't too long. Yeah.
I just got a question.
Sure.
Like, how is their like pay scale compared to, say, like across the state with other counties and stuff like that?
So it is uniform. It's uniform whether you're in Madison or here. So it really hurts where the cost of living is higher than it is here, for sure. We have a hard time recruiting because of our location, where Madison doesn't have as much of a difficult time recruiting, but definitely their retention suffers. So it's uniform across the state. Yep, the whole state is
has
uniform.
the same salaries?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it's
Okay.
all the same. So if you go to Marathon County or you go to Polk County, it's going to be the same.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
They're state-funded positions.
Yep, they're all state-funded positions. That's why the state budget controls whether pay progression is funded, meaning our salary increases. The state budget controls whether they fund that or not. So the framework is there. The state can say we're not going to fund it, and like this year we got $1.09. So, yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Teresa.
Thank you all. I appreciate this committee allowing me to come and present, and always open to questions, and I can promise you'll keep trying to do more to be efficient. So Thank you.
Well, thank you for all your hard work, and please extend that to your staff.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to 8. Next meeting date and time, location, announcements, and future agenda items. Supervisor Marash, I did get your email about that. I will talk with Administrator Leonard about that, and Sheriff Billup about what his thoughts are on that. I want to make sure it's agendized before we discuss it in group, but just see what he has to say about it, and we can talk. So, anyone ever have anything else they'd like to see on the next agenda?
What we just talked about, a resolution to the state, do we have to wait for WCA to do something, or can we just go ahead and do our own to recommend that?
We can always do our own, but I guess if it's uniform, it typically has a little more power if you
Okay.
back by every
So we have
county.
to wait for WCA then?
We'll be seeing him on the 18th, so I guess Mark O'Connell or whoever we need to talk to.
Yeah, we can ask at the upcoming conference, but Teresa, do you know when the WDAA is going to have theirs finalized? It's the DA Association, right, that you're talking about, that, for the resolution, that kind of template resolution that they were working? Okay. So if the committee wishes, we can just work with Teresa to get that on the agenda for next meeting for you to discuss and consider a draft.
And I guess my thought process, if you have something that you'd like to see, we could always bring it to the counties association too and say, look, this is what we're thinking of doing on our county. Is there some way we can get this out to other counties also?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely nothing that is going to be, it's whether or not you want to support it. It's the language isn't controversial or anything. It's very simple. So I can get that to you guys. Should I just send it to you?
Send it to both Lance and I so we
Okay.
can take a look at it.
Sure. I'll do that right away.
Okay. All right. With that, I will take, next meeting's October 11th, 2022 at 1:30. Any issues that you have, let us know. 9 is adjournment. Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.